The morning began like any other, but within minutes, the air outside the Supreme Court grew electric as reporters sprinted toward the courthouse steps, clutching microphones and cameras. The 9 justices had just released a decision, one so unexpected that even seasoned political analysts were caught off guard. Whispers spread quickly, then turned into shouts as the first lines of the ruling were read aloud. It was clear this wasn't an ordinary judgment, it was a seismic shift, the kind of ruling that would alter the nation's path for decades. News anchors interrupted regular programming with urgent updates, their voices heavy with shock. Phones across the country buzzed with breaking alerts. Families turned up the television volume in their living rooms, and office workers crowded around computer screens to catch the live broadcast. Even in schools, teachers paused their lessons as students asked curious questions about why adults looked so stunned. Outside the courthouse, crowds began to gather, some holding flags and banners, others standing silently in disbelief. The decision wasn't just about law, it was about identity, values, and the very future of the nation. For some, it brought a wave of hope, a long-awaited victory after years of waiting. For others, it felt like a betrayal, a decision that cut deep into the fabric of justice. By the time the sun fully rose, the story had spread far beyond Washington, D.C., reaching every corner of the country. In coffee shops, people whispered about what it might mean for their families. On buses and trains, strangers debated with heated voices. Across the nation, one question echoed louder than all others. What happens now? The ruling spread like wildfire, traveling from Washington to the farthest corners of the country within hours, and the sense of shock was impossible to ignore. In bustling cities, commuters froze in place as headlines flashed across giant digital billboards. While in small towns, neighbors stood on porches talking in hushed but urgent tones about what the decision might mean for them. Television screens glowed in diners, gas stations, and living rooms, showing live reactions from legal experts who themselves struggled to hide their astonishment. Families gathered around kitchen tables, parents attempting to explain to their children why the news felt so heavy, even though they themselves were unsure of the full consequences. Some people cheered, feeling vindicated after years of frustration, while others sat in silence, unable to process what had just happened. Social media erupted with hashtags, trending debates, and millions of voices clashing at once, each person convinced their interpretation was the truth. In schools, young people whispered excitedly in hallways, repeating snippets of what they heard at home, trying to make sense of why adults looked anxious and unsettled. The ruling had cracked open a deep divide, one that wasn't just political but personal, touching on values, identity, and the dreams of everyday citizens. By midday, the country felt transformed. Ordinary conversations replaced by arguments, casual greetings replaced by worried questions. The nation's pulse quickened as people realized that this decision was not an isolated event, but the start of something larger, something that would ripple through every community, workplace, and household. It was no longer a distant legal matter reserved for lawyers and politicians. It was now a personal reality that every American had to face. And as the hours passed, the shock gave way to rising voices, demanding to be heard. By the afternoon, silence was no longer an option across the nation. Voices began to rise, each louder and more determined than the last. In the heart of major cities, crowds poured into the streets carrying hand-painted signs, their chants echoing against tall buildings as helicopters hovered above to capture the scene. Some demanded change and accountability, declaring that the ruling had struck at the core of justice, while others celebrated with equal passion, calling it a long-overdue correction to the system. News channels split their screens, showing both the protests and the celebrations side by side, painting a picture of a country divided yet equally energized. Politicians wasted no time stepping into the spotlight, giving fiery speeches that fueled emotions on both sides, while community leaders urged calm and understanding, though their voices were often drowned out by the growing uproar. Social media became a battlefield of words, with millions of posts flooding timelines every minute, some filled with anger, others with triumph, and many with confusion. In neighborhoods, people debated on sidewalks, in grocery stores, and at bus stops, often with strangers they had never spoken to before, united only by the urgency of the moment. Late into the night, the voices did not fade. Instead, they grew louder, echoing through parks, city squares, and even small-town courthouses, where residents gathered to discuss what the decision truly meant for them. It wasn't just a legal ruling anymore, it had become a rallying cry, a spark that ignited emotions buried deep within the hearts of millions. For some, it was a call to action. For others, a warning of battles still to come. And as the chants continued to rise into the night sky, one thing was certain: the people would not remain silent. The impact of the Supreme Court's decision did not stop at the borders of the United States. It spilled outward, creating ripples that touched nearly every corner of the globe. International leaders reacted quickly, some issuing cautious statements of concern, while others openly criticized or praised the ruling. Depending on how it aligned with their own nation's values, stock markets swayed unpredictably, investors scrambling to adjust to the sudden uncertainty, while businesses, both large and small, braced for the consequences that were sure to follow. In America, the ruling began to seep into daily life in unexpected ways. College classrooms erupted into debates. Workplace conversations grew tense, and even casual gatherings with friends turned into heated discussions. Families found themselves divided at dinner tables, with parents and children holding opposing views, struggling to understand how one decision could draw such a sharp line through the heart of the nation. News anchors around the world replayed the moment the decision was announced, analyzing every word of the justice's ruling, while legal scholars warned of future challenges that might reshape the law even further. For ordinary citizens, the ripple effect meant uncertainty about their jobs, their freedoms, and their futures. Some feared that this was just the beginning of larger shifts, while others believed it opened a door to long-awaited progress. Even churches, community halls, and local organizations began hosting urgent meetings, attempting to guide people through the confusion and unease. The ruling had become more than lut, had become a force that disrupted the rhythm of everyday life, leaving no corner untouched. As night fell once again, it was clear that the aftershocks of this decision would continue to spread, shaping not just the present moment but the destiny of generations yet to come. As dawn broke the following day, the country woke to a new reality, one shaped not only by the Supreme Court's ruling, but by the emotions it unleashed across the nation. The air still buzzed with debates. The streets carried the echoes of protests from the night before, and every household seemed to wrestle with questions that had no easy answers. Yet, amid the uncertainty, a quiet determination began to grow. Communities started to organize, forming groups to challenge or support the decision through legal battles, petitions, and marches. Lawmakers prepared for a stormy season ahead, drafting new proposals while promising their supporters they would not back down. For ordinary people, life moved forward, but with a heightened awareness that history had shifted beneath their feet. Parents held tighter conversations with their children about values, fairness, and responsibility, knowing the future was now more uncertain than ever. College students gathered late into the night, sketching visions of how they might become the leaders to shape tomorrow. Around the world, nations watched closely, aware that what happened in America often set the tone for global politics and culture. Still, the heart of the story remained in the people themselves, divided yet resilient, wounded yet unwilling to surrender. Some found hope in the idea that great change often comes through great struggle, while others worried about the fractures that could deepen further. But one truth was undeniable: this ruling had awakened a fire in the nation, a fire that could not be easily put out. And as the sun set on this historic day, the United States stood at a crossroads, its citizens holding the power to decide whether the path ahead would be marked by unity or division, progress or conflict. The next chapter belonged to them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Subscribe to the Silent Side USA for more powerful stories and updates.